Hello, everybody. Welcome to our latest edition of the Mid-Atlantic PGA's Education Series. Today we have pretty exciting for me. We have Jennifer Munro with us. Jennifer is, I guess you could describe as a personality profiler. And I met Jennifer through Jim Hardy, the legendary Hall of Fame golf instructor, and he kind of taught me a little bit about it, but then Jennifer is kind of the expert and very good friends with Jim, and had some very cool things kind of talk to us about, of maybe why, certain people, you like to play with certain people and why you don't like to play with people. Even from an instruction side of people walking in, you have some difficult lessons sometimes, and why there may be that person kind of rubs you the wrong way, and what you can do to kind of help the situation and make it a little bit better for you as well as the student. But I'm going to kind of turn it over to Jennifer, and welcome, Jennifer, and thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I never get tired of talking about this stuff. So I'm glad to be here. And we agreed we're going to call this Personality Matters in Golf. I believe personality matters in everything that you do. It matters in who you like, who you don't like, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, why you play golf. When you look at people and ask them, why do they play golf? Most of them will say, I play to relax. That's really not true. And they really don't relax. They're usually playing with somebody that isn't very relaxing. So that goes out the window. So anyway, I want to tell you the reason I got started in this, which was so apparent to me, was I didn't start playing golf till I was 50 years old. And I got addicted the first time I went out on a corporate outing. And so I immediately bought everything on the infomercials and talked to everybody I knew that played golf. And I had, I'm a corporate consulting person, basically. I've worked with over 1,000 corporations. And I had very high-end clients, and they all play golf pretty much. So I started telling them if they would give me if they would take me to play golf around the country, I would give them a discount on my fees. And they did. And not only did they take me to play golf, but they took their executive teams most of the time, or their sales teams, or their different departments. And so being a profiler since 1981 and having done about 60,000 profiles at that time, I couldn't help notice that they had patterns of what they did. And these were captains of industry in control of everything. They control their families, their communities, their companies, but they couldn't control their golf game. So I started noticing, because I always had their profiles before I met them. I always did the profiles on the senior level before I went into a company. And I started noticing there was a pattern of how they play, when they play well, and when they get in trouble, and whether or not they recover. And so I was just having fun. I was making notes, and then 9/11 hit, and travel stopped pretty much, and there were no big sales meetings or corporate meetings. And so I started, because I was addicted to golf, I started getting more golf clients. And so I had amassed about 20, I guess, golf-related companies. And so one of them was a golf school. And I went out to attend a golf school, big one, lots of people in it, 5 days. And so about the third day, the owner asked me, why is it that 100 people can go through golf school and they can sit in the same chairs and listen to the same message by the same person, and at the end of the day, 20% will come up and say, that was the worst day I've ever had. I cannot stand that instructor. And then 20% would say, that is the best instructor I have ever seen. Nothing has ever meant so much to me as this day. And then the others in the middle would say, it was a pretty good day. Isn't it? I got a lot out of it. And so I said, well, it's because the people who are compatible with the way that instructor teaches love that instructor. and their learning strategy matches that instructor's teaching strategy. And the ones that really don't like that instructor are pretty much opposite in the way they learn and what they want to learn and what the instructor wants to teach and how he teaches it. So when things were pretty slow there, and after 9/11, I sat down and wrote the golf profile, which is now called the Golf Mind RX profile. And so I started working more and more with golfers. And then I even ended up working with professionals, as you know, and I did work with the 2015, 17, and 19 Solheim team with Julie Inkster. And we used the profiles to construct the pods, how the girls were divided up into pods, who they practiced with, who they lived with, who they played with, preceding the Solheim, for practice and that sort of thing. And so I was amazed. I always tell people, please don't even look at me to tell you how to play golf, but I'll tell you basically how you think and when your thinking is wrong and how to fix it. And so that's pretty much what we do. So back to the question of why some instructors are so loved and so not loved. I worked with Golf Digest schools for 2.5, 3 years, well, almost 4 years. And we had instructors audition for the roles, and we eliminated 90% of them, probably, because they couldn't get past saying things like, you're going to have to get a lot worse before you get better. And we thought that was a firing event, because nobody wants to hear that. Even if you think it, you shouldn't say it. And so, and then we had people that came in and said, I've had the same instructor for 18 years. He's never fixed my slice. You got to wonder, right? Well, it's because he's at their club and they can't do anything about it. But the big thing was when they came to our schools, they would say, I don't want my instructor to know that I went to this school. So I don't want him to be able to tell that I learned anything. Now, see, I thought those things were silly, but
I'll agree with that.
But it's just, but I was so fascinated because I love golf so much. And I believed every time you play, you ought to be able to play your best golf. You ought to be able to go out every time and play your very best golf. It can't make you go from a 22 to a 2, but I can help you. We can help you understand how to play the best every time you play. So I've worked with First Tee and a lot of other exciting, nice golf programs. And I have to tell you, some of them are quite underwhelming. They don't really have much benefit for the end user, I would say, in a lot of ways. And it's mostly because they don't make anybody you want us to cut off right now, see your little pictures go away. But I'm just going to tell you that a lot of people don't get the results they want when they go to golf lessons. And we can blame the customer all day long if we want to. But the bottom line is there are a lot of ways to help golfers become better if we're just willing to recognize they're different than we are. We have different learning strategies. We're not interchangeable Legos. So I understood early on that golfers play for very different reasons, just like people teach for different reasons. And it comes down to the cornerstone traits that Carl Jung described, forever ago, and Hippocrates described in 409 BC, right? Basically, if you consider the elements, if you're baking a cake, right? So if you're baking a cake, I'm not a baker, but I know there's some very basic components in a cake. There's flour and there's milk and sugar and eggs and some flavoring and so forth. But from those small amount of components or ingredients, you can bake unlimited kinds of cakes. You would never have to make the same kind of cake twice with just a few little changes. And so personalities are like that. The simple thing about personality and understanding personality is it is composed of very simple ingredients, 4 cornerstone traits, and then some logic and energy issues too. And so, but we don't have any 2 people ever who have the same profile. We have people who share things in common, but we don't have any two who have ever been exactly the same. So it's the combination of the ingredients. How do you combine them? How much of this one, how much of that one, how little of this one, which two are put in there together, which are added later. So once you understand that personality is simple because it's composed of these few ingredients, that's easy. And then the hard part is saying, how does this affect my relationship with this golfer, or my teaching instruction to this golfer, or why the golfer is doing what they're doing? This applies to kids. I work with US Kids Golf. We developed the color coding system for the kids, not the color coding on selling the clubs. That's different. That's based on their size, but it's about who we put together in the lessons, because kids do better when they are in a compatible environment with other kids. And some kids do better when they are somewhat isolated from other kids. So we developed the color coding system for US Kids, and it's easy for the instructors when they see their little name tags and they come out, for the lessons, to know which kid wants what and gets the most out of instruction. So before I describe the 4 components, do you have any questions or anything about that? Any comments? Anybody check out yet? Yes, that's good. All right.
No, I don't see any questions that have come through yet.
Okay, good. All right, so let's make it as simple as possible. And that is that personality is composed of these cornerstone traits. And there's about 3,500 profiles available. And 99% of them have no validations whatsoever, but they all kind of talk about these 4 traits. So if you've taken any of the Myers-Briggs or the DISC or the PI or Caliper or Hogan or any of those things, you'll hear this language. And so we're using the same language. We measure it, I think, maybe a little better, but we do use the same language. So the first trait is dominance. And so I have a book called Personality Matters in Entrepreneurial Thinking, and we describe dominance, not like a lot of people describe dominance. So a lot of people think when they hear dominance, oh, it means pushy, controlling, has to have their own way. They're bossy, they're insensitive, they're all these things. Well, in this vernacular, dominance simply means, to what degree is it important for this person to have control over their own destiny? And that's the question, whether they're 6 or 60 or 18. If a person has dominance as their highest trait, and everybody has more than one trait, but if it's the highest trait, the first and foremost thing they're thinking about is controlling their own destiny. And they view that in terms of goals and results. So a person of any age, you have a toddler who's 2 or 3 and they have this trait, you will know it. So at any age, they want to control things around them so they can get what they want, reach their goals and their results. So when you are instructing them, meeting them, talking to them, what their brain is filtering, the brain is filtering while you're talking and trying to get their attention. They are thinking about this. Does this get me closer to my goals and results, or does it pull me farther away? And if they can't answer that what they're hearing is going to get them closer, they're going to tune out. And they tune out in about 20 seconds. So you don't have a whole lot of time. They don't have long attention spans. But if they can see that what you're saying is going to get them closer to their goals and results, they will tune in and they'll stay with you. So we joke about them because they will come to a golf school. Maybe they play 4 times a year because they're busy executives, or maybe they just play in the summer because they're kids. So they come to a golf school, but the executive might have a, $1,000 driver, right? It's got the new cover on it. It's never been hit, right? And the last thing he wants to hear is, pull out your 7-iron. Let's go to the driving. Let's go to the driving. He doesn't want to hit the 7-iron. He wouldn't have paid $1,000 for a driver if he wanted to hit the 7-iron. But if you can teach him to hit the driver, he'll come back and learn how to hit the other clubs. So they have a very direct viewpoint of what you say and do. Now, the second one is what we call the high extroversion person. Extroversion, introversion is very complicated because it's a difficult relationship between extroverts and introverts. Many golf instructors are introverts. And so introverts speak in a different language than extroverts do. And extroverts maybe drive introverts crazy. And introverts also unnerve extroverted teachers. So the drive behind the extrovert is relationship. And so initially when I wrote the golf profile, I called these social golfers. I called the dominant ones challengers, and I called the social people, the people with high extroversion were social golfers. That does not mean they just want to go out and just be social. What it means is if there's no social component to it, they don't have as much fun. And they actually play for fun. The challenger, dominant, goals-oriented driver plays to win. And so it's all about winning. And if you look at the ones on the tour, we can talk about them later. They're the ones that want to hit the ball from around the tree, through 3 other trees, over the lake and through the sand up to the green. So they are the challengers. They practice the really hard shots. They don't sit there and drill all day on the common shots. So the relationship driver or the relationship golfer, when you're talking to that person, you're saying some wonderful things, but what he is hearing or she is hearing is whether or not you like them. Are you going to be friends with them? Do you treat them like they're special? They don't like canned presentations. They don't like things that you say to everybody else. They like to hear that you are zoned into them, tuned into them, and they want to tell you stories. And they want to tell you stories not to waste time, but they will tell you personal stories, a lot more personal information than a lot of people want to hear, because they want you to relate back to them and tell them something back so they know how you think. So when you share some personal information about yourself, they know, oh, I can trust this person because I know how they think. So the more extroverts talk and the quieter instructors get, the more of a gap there is in the trust issue of whether they can learn from you or not. So there always has to be a component of fun. If we take US kids, for instance, if we have a very introspective, introverted kid and we put him in the middle of 3 or 4 extroverted kids, he'll be overwhelmed. His energy level will be drained and he won't get much out of the lesson. So, so extroversion then is driven by, does this enhance my ability to have the kind of social and relationship experiences I want or not? And so they can't really get through to the information you're telling them until they reach that conclusion that this is going to do that. It's going to make them less embarrassed. They don't like being embarrassed on the golf course. So the next one is what I call the security-driven profile. And the security-driven profile has a trait that we call it's a patience trait. That's the highest trait above the line, is a patience trait. Doesn't mean they like to stand in line. It just means that they are willing to wait and willing to practice and willing to take all the time necessary to do what they need to do. So if they're security-driven, their question is, you're talking to them, introducing what you're doing, trying to explain the lesson. They're questioning, filtering through their brain. It's the way the brains are hardwired. They're filtering, does this information seem compatible with what I've learned in the past? So they're always looking to the past, because being security-driven, change is unnerving to them. Change without explanation, change without briefing ahead of time of what's going to occur, and without giving them time to process it, is scary. And so they will be reverting back to what they know or what they think they know or what they read or how many videos they saw before they came there or how many books they've read or how many teachers they've had and what they've said or what their father told them. And they'll be thinking back about all those things to see if what you're saying is compatible with that or not. And so we also call those traditionalists. They like to do what has worked in the past. If they're on tour, you find that they don't want to make any changes during the season. So no matter what's going wrong, they want to wait until the season's over, usually, to drill that in and what they call groove that in off season. The fourth one is the certainty-driven golfer. And the certainty-driven golfer is filtering information through, how do I know this is true? How can I be sure of this? Because the certainty-driven golfer is trying to be perfect. They are by nature perfectionists. They go into occupations where there's process and systems and data and protocols that if they master those, they're always going to be okay. The being right part of it is essential. So they want to be in a position where they know they're going to be right. Their brain is filtering the information that you're giving them based on what kind of credentials you have, who you've taught, how long you've taught, what were the results. They'll look up all of your credentials before they meet you. They'll make sure that you are who you say you are. And so they are always looking for certainty. They are so analytical and they grasp such great amounts of data and information. They become doctors and lawyers and surgeons and accountants and engineers and anything where being right is important, where being wrong is really a negative. And so you will hear them saying to you as you're telling them for the 10th time why this is the proper way to do it. They will say, yes, but, okay, because they're what we call negative sorters. And so when you're making a statement, I want you to do this, or here's what we want to do, their brain is finding what is wrong with that statement. They don't do it on purpose. They don't do it to be irritating, although they can be irritating. They do it because they have to be right. So for them to be right, you have to be wrong. So they're not going to be confrontational, but they will say, well, yes, but I read these 10 books, or yes, but, Rotella says this, and yes, but, or they'll say, on the other hand, or, well, I see what you're saying, but not really. So when you want them to do something, it's a little bit of a different teaching strategy for them. And we can talk about teaching strategies, but everybody's got some of all those traits, but what really dominates their decision-making, their perspective of you, their perspective of their lesson, of what they're going to do with it, that all depends on the highest trait. Now, some of them, rarely, but some of them have traits that conflict within them. And so you may see a different kind of person sometimes from the last time you saw them. They may be coming in with that other trait operating. So, but those four components are what creates every single personality, every action, every decision, all of their opinions and how they respond. So it's just a matter of figuring out what is the highest, the biggest component in that personality, what other ones might be weighing on it or influencing it or masking it a little bit. But once you know just the top trait, that gives you an insight into about 85% of the things they do and say and think. But if you can be ready to answer those 4 questions, does this get me closer or farther from my goals? Does this enhance my ability to have fun on the golf course with friends? Does this give me the security of going out and being able to play solid, reliable, dependable, consistent golf without any big conflicts or any, breakdowns and does this. Am I sure I can rely on this? Am I absolutely certain this is the key to my playing better golf? So that's what they're asking. So the more you're prepared to answer those things, the quicker you'll move forward with them and the quicker they will start believing what you say. So any questions at this point?
I don't see any questions in the chat, but I will remind everyone that if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat and we'll either Shauna or I will read them out to Jennifer.
Okay, so I guess we'll go to the instructors. So we've been talking a little bit about the golfers. So if we go to the instructors, instructors have teaching preferences. They teach a certain way. And the more adaptable and flexible you are in teaching, the more fun you'll have teaching, and the more rigid and I guess just dead set teaching the same thing the same way all the time, the less well that will go. So instructors have filters when they're meeting somebody, and you all will have an opinion. I'm going to like this person. I'm not going to like this person. This person's going to give me a hard time. This person's going to be easy. This is going to be fun. So you are at the same time, your brain is filtering what you're seeing. So when you're filtering what the golfer is telling you, you're saying to them, well, I need to do some things to build this relationship here, and we do it in different ways. The instructor that has dominance as their highest trait, and there are really not that many of them, but they believe that if this person's coming here, they must want me to fix it. They must want me to solve this problem. That's why they're coming. They wouldn't come if they didn't want me to give them the results and the solution. And so the high dominant, goals-oriented instructor tends to take a stance that, okay, here you are, and here's what you need to do. And so that works great if the customer, student, is also high dominance. That's exactly what they want to hear. Just think about, though, if you are a relationship person and the instructor comes across like, okay, we're going to have this lesson, we're going to see how it goes. They're not likely to say, by the way, we're going to have to take 6 lessons. They wouldn't do that. They will say, well, let's go see what you've got and let's see what we can do to fix it. What is it you want to fix today? And let's go do that. A relationship person might say, he must not like me because he didn't spend any time getting to know me. I told him who sent me here, and he didn't get really, too much time in that conversation, kind of just moved right on, very bottom line. So a relationship person might have, going through their filter, they might be thinking, well, he wants to do what he wants to do. He doesn't want to hear what I want to do. And I don't feel like he's very friendly to me. So you can see where that might be a little bit of a turnoff, which means you kind of start off in a hole. You don't start off where you really need to be to get the most out of instruction. Was there somebody that said something, or okay? So say you're a dominant instructor and you get a security oriented traditionalist and golfer that comes to you. And the minute you say, okay, look, what do you want? Well, sometimes they don't really know. And so when you just go direct and straightforward to the point, they're kind of pushed back because they want to tell you all the things that have happened to them already and what went wrong and how they've tried this and tried this and tried this. Because they want to hear that they want you to hear they have a special problem. And that you are going to be really interested in their special case, and that you understand what they've gone through, and you're not going to make them do that again. And if you have a certainty-driven customer, he may be overwhelmed because There's too direct, too straightforward, and not very formal, because they're very formal. So if you just jump right in, and they don't like to be called by their first name either. They like to be called Dr. this, Mrs. this, Mr. that. So if you jump right into, let's go fix the problem, they're saying, well, wait a second. You don't even know what my problem is. You don't seem to know who I am. Probably don't care who I am. So they pick up on that. So in that first 2 or 3 minutes, that if it's not another dominant student, those other 3 students have got their radars up, right? So they're already a little wary. They're already a little put off.
Jim,
So if we,
Jennifer,
yeah.
there was a question that came in kind of related to this, which is, are there any key questions that we can ask to bring out a person's major trait in that first lesson or that first interview, that first encounter?
Absolutely. There is a lot. There are. Can I finish the 3
Sure. Yep.
instructors first? Because if I haven't hit on who you are as an instructor yet, it won't mean anything to you. So
Gotcha.
as I'm going through this, you ought to be able to be determining what kind of instructor you are. So we have the high extroverted instructors, right? And they're all about first names, and this is going to be fun, and listening to you. They're very good listeners. They want to know, what it is you want to do, and who all you know, and tell you who all they know, and all the things you have in common. And they're going to be building rapport, because an extroverted instructor wants to know who that customer is. Right? So they want to build some rapport. They want to know, how does this person think, so I can really relate to this person. Now, if you are a dominant student and you say, what business is it of yours? I don't care. I don't want to talk about all that. I just want to tell you what I need, and I want you to fix it, right? So they may think an extroverted, and I'm only giving you the negatives because if it's all positive, you don't have to worry about any of this, right? If everything's just going great, you don't have to worry about it. But if you feel hesitancy or resistance, this is what causes it. So a dominant person may say, yeah, that's nice. Well, I want to go hit the driver. I'm in a tournament next week, and I've got this big money on. I spent $10,000 on the Pro-Am, and I want to go hit my driver. So if you're an extroverted instructor, you may think, well, that's not very nice. That's kind of unkind, disinterested. What an arrogant guy. I don't even like this guy. So you might not be inclined to really want to fix him. But anyway, I'm just saying they don't think the same way. And so as soon as they cut you off, as soon as they say, let's just jump to the next thing, or fast forward, or let's just go do this, they have high dominance. That's one sign. So if you are a security driven customer, but you're an extroverted instructor, those of you who are out there know you are. If you're extroverted, you know it. And so if you're trying to instruct a security-driven person, he is usually somewhat hesitant about people. They tend to have a few select really good friends, not an overwhelming horde of acquaintances they call friends. They're very suspicious of how somebody can be very friendly up front, right off the bat, without knowing them. They're very suspicious of anybody that's asking them personal questions, trying to get into their head before they define a teaching strategy. And so they're warm, they're friendly, but if you keep telling them who you know and personal stories, trying to find a place you can meet with them, they tend to become more withdrawn. They tend to become quieter. And so once they become more withdrawn, they really can't hear what you're saying, because they're really worried about saying something that would cause conflict or getting into things that don't have anything to do with, they're kind of very much on the business end of things. It's a transaction. I'm paying you. I want this set of lessons. They like a set of lessons, because a set of lessons makes them feel we have a plan, we have plenty of time, we're going to work out the kinks as we go, we're going to take our time. So they like a plan of lessons. And they want to hear it all laid out ahead of time. So if you're a very extroverted instructor and a certainty-driven person comes, most of them, not all, but most of them are introspective, and they do not like anything that seems superficial. They do not like somebody being friendlier than they should be. They're, like I said, they're more formal. They want to be greeted on a formal basis. And they are looking for process and systems. They're looking for the perfection key. They're looking for what is that thing that they can master and don't mind practicing and studying. Well, what is that special thing that will keep them from making mistakes? And so if you're too friendly and you're too casual about it, oh yeah, well, this takes some time. We'll work this out. And, we're just going to go wherever your needs lead us. That's too casual for them. They want to know specific, exact detail in order of what you're going to do. And they want to buy into that. Okay, so now we're only gotten to the extroversion, instructor. So the next one would be the high patience. Now, most instructors have patience as their highest trait. I'm just saying more than, when I say most, I'm saying probably 70% have that as their highest trait. And another bunch of them have it above the line, okay? So these are the people who have all the knowledge in the world. The instructor is knowledgeable, got the credentials, has passed the courses, has put in the years, has paid the dues, has all the knowledge. And think about a professor and a professorial kind of view. So if they have a high dominant person comes in, bottom line, I want to hit the driver. I want to take one lesson. I want to win the tournament next week. No, they don't. They're saying this guy is going to come for me if he doesn't win that tournament, right? He's coming back for me. I'm not going there, so they'll just start telling him all the reasons why those expectations are unrealistic and where they have to start, and they'll start trying to avoid perhaps upcoming conflict somewhere along the line. And so the more they try to explain, the more they draw that out, and the more they lay that premise, the more they will lose that high dominant student. So it's very important to know, as soon as you hear that, to have your own adjustment where and then we'll get some questions too, like I said, to make sure we know. But it's important to be able to say, okay, I can't guarantee you're going to win that tournament, but we're going to go learn to hit that driver. And what you do after here is up to you. But while you're with me, you'll hit that driver better today. And that's a deal. That's a transaction. And you can keep your end and they can keep their end, even if they do blow up in the tournament, which they could. So if you're dealing with a high extroversion student, they're gonna ask you personal questions and tell you personal information, because remember, they're relationship oriented. They're always going to try to connect. They're going to connect with anybody they're around. So they will start taking up time in the lesson in the beginning, especially, to lay that foundation of whether or not we can be friends or not, whether or not we have something in common. It doesn't take much. Kids could go to the same school. You could be rooting for the same team, but as long as they know you have something in common, then they can relate to you. And so the high extrovert a lot of times gets cut off by the traditional instructor because it seems like time wasters to the instructor, but to them it's very important to have that personal rapport. So the next one, the certainty-driven person, has the hardest time with the extroverted instructor, because a certainty-driven person is looking for consistency every single time. The same system, same protocol, same process, same formality of the lesson. And extroverts get bored doing that. They don't like to teach the same way all the time. So there's always that disconnect. The certainty person is saying, well, I was expecting this, in their mind, I was expecting this, but I got this. And so that will alienate a certainty-driven instructor. Okay, so the security-driven instructor, knowledgeable, always knows what he's doing, knows how to say it, knows how to teach it, but being the big majority of instructors have that whole other world out there that don't really relate to that all that well. So it's not that hard to adjust if you know what you're looking at. And the certainty-driven instructor, okay, there are people that hate drills. I hate drills. I'd rather have my eyelashes pulled out than do drills. Okay, and certainty-driven students and certainty-driven instructors like drills. Why? Because they're specific, consistent. They, you can expect them. They're detailed. They're the same every time. There's always that plan. Here's our progress. Here's our flow chart of where we started and where we're going and where we're going still. And so the certainty-driven instructor will often fall back on credentials, you know, how long I've played, how much I know, who all I knew, who all I, taught. And they have very structured ways of looking at golf. Now, I will say it is impossible for you to be feeling a feel player, feeling the swing, feeling your process if you are a certainty-driven person going through a checklist. You cannot go through the checklist and feel at the same time. If you sit there and try it, you will know you have no feeling when you are going through a checklist. Checklist has to be prior to playing. So when we take feel out of it for a student, because we have him so analytical, so going through his process, remembering so many things. I have had certainty-driven students that had as much as 25 things on their checklist when they address the ball. And that is just crazy making for them, because that ball is going to have a hard time ever getting off the tee or off the ground, because they will miss step number 11 or step 14. And so, but certainty-driven people are afraid to make a mistake. They hate criticism. Security-driven people hate conflict. So certainty-driven people hate mistakes and criticism so badly, they will become immobilized, trying to make sure they've checked the whole list off. And so it's important for us to get them down to one or two things. And the certainty-driven instructor is very much like that. I can't let this lesson go by until I've covered this and this and this and this. I've got to say this and this and this and this. And unless somebody learns that way, which is 20% of the population, there's going to be a disconnect in the teaching and the learning. Okay, so now what? So we're going to talk about, are there questions you can ask? Are there any other questions while I'm at it?
The other question we received was, well, it's a statement and then a question. This came from Herb. He said, often our golf students and their golf performance suffer from fear, lack of confidence, and previous golf trauma, and repeated failures on certain types of shots. How do we help them improve their golf games? And do we need different instruction strategies to be effective with different personality types? So,
yeah, yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, so first of all, some of the questions. All right. When you ask that other one's so important, and how to teach them differently. I want to get back to that, but just briefly, the first thing to do is ask them the questions, not assume that you know what they're doing there, or you know what that lesson's going to be like. And so the first thing is, I know a lot of you say, what brought you here? Why are you here? Everybody goes through that. But when they say whatever their answer is, the question I think should be, when you play golf, for instance, what is your favorite club? And so we've done studies on this, and we know that generally speaking, the people who have the high dominance and high extroversion tend to favor the woods, the driver, the woods. The people with the high patience and high certainty tend to favor the wedges and the short game. And so that doesn't mean they don't all want to learn all of them. It just means that if their favorite part of the game isn't working, the rest of it's not going to matter. See what I mean? If they can't play their favorite kind. And then when somebody wants to tell you what went wrong in the past, if they start saying, well, you know, I've been golfing all these years and I've had, you might say, how many lessons have you taken? Or, oh, thousands, you know, hundreds of lessons, and you still have a slice. Yeah. Okay. So, so what goes wrong? And they will say, well, you know, they'll tell you whatever goes wrong. But when they say that they have had the same problem for 18 or 20 years or 10 years, they probably are very traditional, because what happens is they always want to revert back to what they have known in the past, how they learned. And so the question is, why, you know, what is your most important thing here today? What would you like to work on? And they'll say, if it's a dominant person, he'll say, well, I want to do this, this, and this. And if it's an extroversion person, they'll say, well, you know, I play in this group and I get distracted and I have a lot of fun. When you hear people talking about other people distract them a lot, and you ask them, why is that? Why are you distracted by them? The answer will tell you their personality, right? So if you ask a dominant person, what distracts you? What really bothers you the most on the golf course? And they'll say, slow play. I hate slow play. And if you ask an extroversion, they'll say, I hate negative people. I just don't, I'll be people, right? It's going to be people. So anything that has to do with extroversion, the people are going to come into it. Well, I don't like negative people. I don't like people who don't talk to me. I don't like people who are quiet. You ask a security-driven person, what bothers you most on the golf course? People talking too much. People pushing me. People rushing me. I don't like to be rushed. You ask a certainty-driven person what bothers them most on the golf course, they'll usually say, well, people talking, or they'll say, when I get in between clubs, when something uncertain happens, because they have this plan of what they're going to hit, you know, pretty much through the round. So if something happens, it's unplanned, and they're in between, it's the indecisiveness. I can't make up my mind. So when they say, I can't make up my mind, that's usually a certainty-driven person, because they want to have a go-to every time. So those are a couple of the questions. If you ask them, when do they play their best golf? And the dominant person will say, I play my best golf in a tournament, in a big tournament. Remember, Tiger wouldn't play anything but a big tournament for a long time. So when you say, I really play my best when I'm behind. I play my best when I have strong challengers. Or the extroversion person will say, well, I really play my best when I play with my friends, when I play with people I like. Or the security person will say, I really play my best when I'm not rushed, I have plenty of time, I get a good chance to practice, I love to practice. Security-driven people like to practice more than they like to play, generally speaking, more comfortable. And the certainty-driven person will say, well, when do you play your best golf? When I don't make mistakes. You know, when I stick to my plan, when I stick to what I know I'm supposed to do, when I do my checklist, when I don't leave anything out. So those are the things that they will tell you in that one sentence they come back with, will tell you what their highest trait is. That makes sense? Okay, so yes, do you adjust your teaching strategy to the student? Only if you want to keep them, okay? Don't have to. You don't have to. You can make them wrong all day long, right? And so, and I have heard instructors say, I would love my job if it wasn't for those students. If I didn't have to put up with them all day, I would love this job, right? So, and that's, I have heard that many times. So that tells me that there's a disconnect. People always enjoy what they're doing when they're connecting. And so to change your strategy maybe even means writing out a few talking points or a few notes. When I see this person, what's the first thing I see? Are they direct? Are they staring me in the face? Are they right in front of me? Direct, straightforward? Are they giggling and joking and using their hands all over the place, which tells me they're an extrovert? because extroverts can't talk without their hands. Are they reserved, aloof, very traditional, telling me all the things that have gone wrong in the past and all the places they've been? Or they, well, you know, naming all the names they've read and all the videos they've seen and all the experts they've followed, and they're certainty driven. So yes, once you see they're different than your training style, it's important to say what's important to them. So it's important to adjust to a dominant, whether you're dominant or not. It's important to adjust to a dominant student on what is your main goal of being here? What is your time frame? And what can I do for you? And they will tell you. They do not have any problem, because they wouldn't have made time for the lesson if they hadn't already decided what they wanted to do, right? They wouldn't have done it. They'd be there because they have a purpose. And so the thing is to feel comfortable giving them their purpose, not allowing your own profile of fear of conflict or fear of making a mistake or fear of alienating somebody, not let your own profile get in the way of delivering what that person wants. And there are just as many women and children with that profile as there are men. We just call them different things, but there's just as many of them. So it's about 10% of the population. So, and then teaching to an extrovert, the thing is, if you have a class or you have something where there's people like them that want to have fun, that they can be paired with, or you can share just common stories, just a common story of when you've experienced what they did in any realm, in their business, their work, their golf, whatever, that builds rapport. Once they have a personal connection to you, they will listen. They will see you as a friend. If they don't see you as a friend, they're not going to take lessons from you. And so, and you may not see them as a friend, but they have to see you as a friend. And that means you have an interest in their personal story. And if you are adjusting to a traditional and you are a dominant instructor or an extroverted instructor, keep in mind, they are very suspicious of anything that looks insincere, and they're very suspicious of anything that looks canned. And they want to know that they can trust and believe that you are going to be with them as long as it takes. It's totally different than other profiles. They want your personal assurance. If you're uncomfortable giving your personal assurance, you need to practice that, because they want you to say to them, if this doesn't work, you come back, because we're going to fix it. I'm going to stay with you until this is right. And we may have to do this a couple of lessons, or we may have to do that. We have to revisit this once in a while, but I'm going to stay with you. I'm not going to abandon you. I'm going to be here with you. We're going to make this right. They love, and you should actually say the words, you have my personal assurance. If you don't mean it, don't say it. But if you do mean it, it means a lot to them. And so, and you have the certainty driven instructor. You want to make sure you send him home with a list. You want to send an email following up on the notes. You want to put things in writing, because they believe you if you're willing to put it in writing. So if you will, now other people couldn't care less, a lot of them, but if you will put that in a plan, a list, a checklist for them to work on, and let them see it in writing, especially a follow-up email, just reminding you this, and this is what you can expect, then they will be very comfortable with you. So we're really, the bottom line is you're just giving each one of these people what they need. We already know you know how to teach golf, and they know you know golf. So what you're really giving them is your personal connection. You're connecting the dots with who they are, to deliver the information in a way they are really comfortable getting. And you can also send me an email or call me and say, I've got so-and-so coming, he's a pain in the neck or whatever, and I think he's one of these, and what should I say? And I'll send you a note back to get you over the hump.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. This is all really, really good information. We had Scott Frazier mentioned in the chat that he said, seems like you could draw parallels in instruction topics to dealing with our bosses in managerial roles. So, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and I will tell you something, there's combinations. It is not easy doing your job, and if you're good at it, probably could lose some friends here, but if you're good at it and you have a boss who isn't, that boss is going to know that, and he is going to resent you, and that happens. And so sometimes, no matter how good you are, you can't get the resources and things you need because your boss doesn't want to see you shine. And so my thing would be, you need to move on, or if you have a good ally on the board, the club or whatever, maybe you can get him to move on. So, but I'm just saying, you shouldn't torture yourself every day trying to please somebody that doesn't have your best interest at heart and doesn't recognize talent and may feel like you're threatening to them. That happens. It happens a lot. A lot of people who rise to management positions do it because they don't like teaching, right? And so they say, well, I can now tell everybody else what to do. And anyway, I seem to see a lot of that stuff because people come to me and say, should I leave? Should I stay? What should I do? You know, and it depends on the situation, but you should not be miserable. Anybody who's playing golf, teaching golf, and isn't having fun and happy needs to make some adjustments, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Sean, I want to see whether or not you're able to unmute. Connection challenges. Probably not. Okay, well, wonderful. If anybody has any, we've kind of reached our hour. So Jennifer, if you have any closing remarks or.
Well, the only closing remark I have is, you know, people would spend a fortune and do anything they could to be in the roles you're in, to be able to be around this game, and people that love it every day. And there are so many little things you can do. But if you're frustrated, irritated, and agitated more than like 20% of the time, you need to make some adjustments, because it's just there's just too many opportunities and possibilities for joy and happiness and great relationships to suffer. So you shouldn't be suffering, I guess.
Wonderful.
And call me or send me an email if you have any questions, and I'm glad to answer them. We could spend 2 days on this, but
very true, very true. Jennifer, this was fascinating. Several people in the chat are thanking you, and we echo that appreciation. Thanks so much for joining us today, and for everyone else, thank you also for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next virtual education